can't decide if I love sewing or serging the best. Actually, both are delightful and have their places in our sewing. Sergers can make our garments emerge quickly and easily. We have a great serger trick for you today, and I'll welcome my guest Pam Mahshie to share these tricks with you. Wendy Schoen is going to teach us the wonderful bullion stitch, a great hand embroidery technique. I'm so glad you're here today. Let's begin our serging fun. And especially, I would like to welcome you to my sewing room. This is the most beautiful heirloom pillow. And one of the most exciting things about this pillow is it is totally made on the serger. The shadow pin tucks are made on the serger. The laces are joined on the serger. The entredeaux is put in on the serger. And would you look at this perfect puffing done on the serger? So easy, and yet look how perfectly the little gathers go side to side. And all of that was done on a serger. Let's look a little bit at the puffing on the serger. Puffing is made with a strip of fabric, and you cut it selvage to selvage. Now, a selvage is that little finished edge on the edge of fabric. So you cut or tear selvage to selvage. Then you run this on your serger. You run one side through the serger to gather it, the other side to gather it. You have perfect puffing. It is absolutely amazing how the serger knows exactly how to gather it correctly. Then another step you can do by serger is to attach your puffing to your fabric. See how pretty those puffings, little puffs are distributed? Also, there is a foot. Let me bring it up here. There is a clear foot that is available for some sergers. I'm turned around. Clear foot that is available for some sergers, which is wonderful for heirloom sewing on the serger because it's completely clear and it enables you to see how your fabric is feeding through. I'm so pleased to have as my guest today Pam Mahshie. Pam is Director of Education for Baby Lock USA. Pam, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much, Martha.
Thank you for bringing this beautiful pillow.
You're welcome.
Oh, my goodness.
You're welcome. And what we're going to share with your viewers today is puffing. Now, puffing, as Martha was explaining to you, is a technique that we gather a piece of fabric, and as that piece of fabric is gathered, we like to cut the fabric about 2 1/4 inches wide and have that piece cut on the cross grain. The gathering is going to feed into the machine much better, and it's also going to give you much more even gathers as you stitch. Now, we do stitch on both sides of this piece or strip of fabric, and as you can see, those little puffs are equally distributed from side to side. And as I stitch this, I'm going to stitch at a medium or narrow stitch width, and then as I attach it to the strips of fabric or to a strip of entredeaux, I am going to increase the width of my stitch. So let's come over to the machine and watch how we do this. As you can see, we have the clear foot that we've placed on the machine. This makes it much easier as we stitch to see the gathers and what's taking place under the foot and to align properly.
So fast and easy.
Very fast and easy. Now, as I pull this apart, you can see that I can just simply pull on each side, and that's going to distribute the gathers evenly from side to side. Isn't that perfect?
Oh, it is perfect.
Just perfect. Now, the next step is I will take 2 strips of fabric and I am going to increase the width of my stitch. And I'm going to place right sides together, and as I stitch, the stitching that we use to create the puffing is going to be hidden by that outside stitch. I'm going to lower the differential feed back to the neutral setting so I don't gather now as I sew. And that clear foot again is allowing me to see through, and it's very visible, and that puffing is going to be beautiful. So now we have it all stitched
Now,
in
it was
place.
the differential feed that, what did you say about the differential feed?
Differential
I think you want to tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, I do. Let me just snap off the foot and show you. In the machine, you are going to have 2 sets of feed dogs. Now the differential feed will be adjusted on the side of your machine, and the front feed dogs are what actually are adjusted as we increase the differential feed. When we increase the differential feed, the stroke of that front feed dog is going to come longer, and it's going to help gather our piece of fabric as we had on our puffing. Then when we lower the differential feed, the front feed dogs move slower or at a shorter rate, and it's going to hold our fabric taut, so that if we are working with fabrics that tend to pucker a little bit, it will hold and it will not pucker the fabric.
Pam, thank you so much. You know what I really would like for you to do? Show our viewers one more time that beautiful puffing.
Right down here.
And it is so beautiful, it is so perfect, and I imagine that the time, I remember the days when we used to roll and whip over dental floss or quilting thread on puffing, and then you had to push and try to get it even. This just goes so quickly and so wonderfully and so perfectly. I'm just thrilled with this Serger puffing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pam.
You're welcome.
And now Pam has brought some inspirational things for your sewing inspiration. Pam, I'm absolutely enchanted with this jacket. Tell us about it.
Well, what we were doing is with machine embroidery, we used the freestanding lace and stitched all of the lace for the bottom of the jacket. As you can see, there are no seams at all at the bottom of this jacket. And then it was attached to the top part of the linen, and then the entire embroidery was done on the jacket and then lined.
Absolutely a beautiful jacket. Wouldn't this be a beautiful jacket to wear for a wedding, or
It
for
sure
mother
would.
of the bride, mother, or to wear 2 weddings?
Wear 2 weddings.
I know every year I have to hunt for wedding clothes because we get invited to a lot of weddings, and I always want something pretty that looks.
Let me just tell you something
okay.
on here. Just don't start this the afternoon before you're ready to go to the wedding, because it does take quite a bit of time to do the freestanding lace.
Because you do them one piece at a time.
Right.
This will not be a last-minute project.
That's not a last-minute project.
Well, I'm glad you told me, because you probably guess I'm a last-minute girl. Okay. Wonderful technique. What is this?
This is Serger crochet.
Oh.
And as you can see, there's this beautiful little ruffle that's placed on the edge for the Serger crochet, and this is done with an overlock stitch. And as the overlock is done, it's continually placed one layer on top of the next, and the stitch length is adjusted so that we get that beautiful little ruffle on the edge.
You know, when you say, can there ever be anything new? Have we done it all? Guess what? Here is something new. And the next one is beyond something new. Pam, I cannot wait for you to tell our viewers about the bottom, the little petticoat on this skirt. Now you just wait until you hear this.
Well, this is something you're going to need to go into your husband's fishing tackle box and get out some of that fish line, because what we've done here is use the fish line, and actually 30-pound test fish line does work the best. We found that out by experimentation. And we used a narrow rolled hem, and as we stitched over the fishing line,
oh,
the
my.
rolled hem is placed around this edge, and as you can see, it gives a nice support.
Fish line
body.
and nothing but thread.
And nothing but
just
thread.
Fish line through the serger.
Fish line and thread.
That's
exactly.
a hoot. All right, so we have 2 things that you think, what's next? And this is the shawl. Uh-oh. That goes with the fish line skirt.
Right.
So pretty. This time it's black and the beautiful pinks. Mm-hmm. I think this is so fascinating, Pam, and you really do have something brand new. And it's very fashionable and very elegant. Mm-hmm. This is a New York, Paris, London kind of look.
Right, and you wouldn't guess that it's done on the serger.
No, nor on fish line.
Nor on fish line, exactly.
Pam, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And now Pam has a so quick, so easy project for you. Pam, I'm so excited about your adorable little projects. Tell us about it.
I sure will. We're going to work with Serger lace today. And when we work with the Serger lace, we're going to layer up a piece of tulle and then the water-soluble mesh. And we've placed the tulle between 2 layers of that water-soluble mesh. Then we're going to mark, and you can place markings directly on that water-soluble mesh. You can use a pencil or that washout marker. Simply draw a line in the direction you're wanting to place the stitches. Then I've set the machine, the serger, up for a chain stitch. And the chain stitch with decorative thread in both the upper the chain looper, and the needle. Now, as I'm going to be stitching this, I continue to stitch one row right next to the other. After I'm finished stitching completely, I then take it to the sink or outdoors, depending upon the size of the area that you've stitched. Wash out all of that stabilizer. Then after the stabilizer has been washed out and the top is completely dry, you can press that and layer it to create this great little pincushion for your friends. Now, Martha, you know what I've stuffed this with?
What?
I actually stuffed it with steel wool. Instead of stuffing it with fiber or wool, steel wool, because then every time you place your needles in and out, it's going to sharpen and take off all those rough edges of the pins.
Pam, that is such an outstanding idea.
Yeah. And it took the same technique, and instead of placing a piece of fabric between the two layers, just let that airiness come through and placed it with a sachet or a potpourri, and that way you have a sachet as well.
Now, what about that wonderful trim around
Well, the
the
trim,
edge? Oh.
well, let me show you that real quick too.
Now, that wasn't made on a serger.
Yes, it was. We've made
okay.
that on the serger as well.
Okay.
And this is serger crochet. So we have continuous rows of overlock stitching placed one right on top of the next, using a decorative thread in both the upper and lower looper this time, as well as in the needle, and then adjusted our stitch length.
That is so pretty. What is the white thing at the top? What did you use for
This is a twill tape.
A twill
Just simply
tape at the
get
top.
started, and then you can sew that into your seam, and the twill tape does not add bulk.
That's like the crochet on the little gray jacket we saw just a minute ago.
Exactly. That's
These are and I do love the serger lace, and you know we've also seen that done in white on Christian
Beautiful.
dresses, which was beautiful.
Yes, it is.
Pam, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And next I have some hand embroidery to share with you. I'm so pleased to have as my guest today Wendy Schoen. Wendy has published over 30 patterns under the name of Petite Poche. She has authored 4 books on hand embroidery. She has studied at the Royal School in London and in Madeira, Portugal. Wendy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Martha. Always great to be here. Today I want to talk again about this little sewing basket I brought with me. There's a lot of stitches involved, and today we're going to focus on the bullion stitch, primarily the bullion stitch that is in the shape of heather or laurel type flowers. This little stitch is pretty easy to do, but it's kind of hard to master. So we're going to go through the fine points of how to begin and get started. You see on my sample I've drawn just some straight lines. Now the thing about a bullion is it's just a basic back stitch, but it's a back stitch that's made in the fabric where the needle is wrapped with the thread, and then the wraps are pulled through, and they are just laying on top of the fabric in a pretty bullion effect. Now for this one, we're going to begin by starting with a tie-on stitch in the fabric called a split stitch. In other words, we're not going to use a knot or a waist knot of any kind. Bring the end of the thread down almost to the end to where you just have a little fuzzy tail left over. Then come back with the needle and split through that stitch and bring it up to the starting point. Now, bullions can be 2 different shapes. They can be either tubular, meaning it's the same circumference all the way down the line, or they can be cone shaped. These particular flowers, or petals rather, are going to be cone shaped. So here's how you want to do it. Make sure that when you enter the fabric, the pointed edge is actually pointing towards you, and then you'll know you're in the correct position. You wouldn't want to enter it backwards, in other words, starting from the base to the tip, because then the pointed end would be backwards. So a good way to remember that is to just say to yourself, the pointed end points towards me, and that's how you can remember. I'll go in at the tip of the leaf or petal, come up out the exact same spot at the base. And now I want to make sure that I have enough length on the tip of my needle to wrap. I'm going to wrap clockwise. The first wrap is the most important wrap of all. Make sure it's nicely snug against the fabric because it has a way of working into a kink if you don't hold it tight enough. When you wrap the needle, make sure that the wraps go all the way down to the shaft, right beside the fabric. We're going to wrap enough wraps so that the wraps on the needle equal the distance between the 2 points that I've sewn in the fabric. We can call those 2 points A and B if you like. I want to straighten out my fabric and look at it. And it looks about right to me, but for a cone-shaped bullion, you need to under-wrap the needle. So I'm going to remove one of the wraps. It's kind of an easy way to remember that is, in order to taper the point, you need more space, so don't overwrap the needle. Now, I want to hold on to my wraps. Just let me get them back in order. Hold on to them between your forefinger and thumb. Slide the needle up and then pull it through. Now this is going to be a little bit more difficult than normal because I am using pearl cotton for demonstration purposes. But if you use just regular stranded cotton or floge, you only want to use one strand and you want to make sure to use a round eye needle. Bring the wraps all the way down to the fabric without letting go, and as soon as you feel that you've gotten all the tension out, then you can let go and straighten out the fabric. Now, my wraps look a little out of place, and it's only because I haven't tightened it up sufficiently. So you want to now put your thumb back over the wraps and pull tight. Now, that's my bullion, and it's actually done up to a point to where I need to make the second one. Now, how do I work from one petal to the next? I'm simply going to go down at the point of the petal and angle it out to the beginning point of the second petal. So now I'm actually in position for the next bullion, and all you need to do is repeat the process. You'll notice the shape of this particular leaf or petal or whatever you want to call it is actually tapered, so the wraps are greater towards the back end of the shape, and they go less and less towards the point. So you want to adjust your wraps accordingly. Now, let me go ahead and show you the next sample. This is what the shape looks like when it's completed, and you'll see that all the little bullions are just lined up accordingly. And then to tie off, I wouldn't tie off until I got to the very last petal, and then I would just bring the needle to the back and just slide it underneath the stitches there. You might want to weave it through in and out, and that's all there is to it. And then you can finish up your stem or your branch, whatever you want to call it, with either a back stitch or a stem stitch. But either way, it makes a lovely little flower.
It really does, so delicate and pretty. And you probably know that bullions are my very, very, very favorite embroidery stitch in the whole world, along with French knots.
They're everybody's favorite.
Along with French knots.
That's true.
Thank you so much, Wendy.
My pleasure.
And next I have a doll dressing idea or two for you. My baby doll dress is so very sweet, as is my baby. As you can see, my baby loves to suck her thumb. This pretty, pretty little dress we're going to be talking about putting in the sleeve, but in order to show you the dress, I'm going to have to ask my baby to take her thumb out of her mouth, and she will be happy to, and she won't cry. This is the sweetest little dress with entredot and gathered lace and insertion and pin stitching and entredot and a really sweet skirt. The sleeve is just a little puff sleeve, and what I want to share with you is the easy way that we do the sleeve bands. The bias sleeve band is so easy to do. It's all done by machine. No more of that little whipping that we used to do a long time ago. First of all, on the sleeve, you're going to run 2 rows of gathering, run them reasonably loose, and when you pull to gather and distribute, you know you pull from the bobbin side. Then to make this easy sleeve band, I have a folded piece. It's pressed so well, I'm not even sure I'm going to be able to get it open. I take a piece of fabric and then I fold it. Next, take your folded fabric, which this edge is totally finished, put it on the bottom, raw edges to raw edges, and straight stitch. Now the secret to this, all done on the machine sleeve, is you fold it over, fold it back. Be sure when you fold it back that this finished edge, and this is a finished edge, very easy to do, is a little bit further than the seam line. And then we are going to stitch in the ditch. I've already got this started here. I am using an edge joining foot. It is not necessary to, but it's just a whole lot easier to see exactly where you're going. I am stitching in the ditch from the front side. Get my pin out. I don't know of any sewing machine that company that suggests that you sew over pins. As I used to, I never knew. When I was a kid, I always sewed over pins, had no clue you weren't supposed to. Guess I broke a lot of needles that way. Anyway, I'm stitching in the ditch. Stitching from this front side so it will be perfect and that seam will not show at all. Okay, I have stitched in the ditch, and here is my little sleeve as it is finished. And although I used blue thread with my stitching, if this had been done in white thread or ecru thread as I have my sample, you would not have seen any of the stitch lines at all. That is the easiest little sleeve, and I want you to look one more time at this tiny little sleeve band. We love tiny little sleeve bands on babies' clothes. I mean, that is really delicate and really pretty, the tiny little bias band. And I'm gonna let my baby suck her thumb again because she likes to suck her thumb. And now I have a beautiful baby Christine dress to share with you from my vintage collection. You are going to love the many, many details on this beautiful dress. The dress would have been about 1880 because look at the scoop neck. Now the reason I know it isn't earlier, it isn't in the 1860s, is because it has a little puff sleeve. And the little puff sleeve, which is original to the bodice because I checked the fabrics real carefully. By the way, sometimes they did change sleeves, change fabrics, they updated them. But it is the same fabric, so I'm pretty sure the sleeve is original to the dress, but the skirt may have been added at a later time or replaced. Look at the way this beautiful Swiss embroidery, it comes down and it's mitered up. It comes up and you will notice they have a little gather in the middle. Anytime you come up with a lace or embroidery, you have to put some fullness in this area where you turn a point or it will cup under and not be pretty. Come around and look at also where this seamstress has gathered. She's even done a little tuck here to be sure. Now if it had just been taken around, it would have cupped under and not been pretty. It has two wonderful points on the bodice and then a beautiful strip of insertion and edging, then a beautiful strip of insertion around the waistline. The skirt is absolutely beautiful. I'm going to pull it up to show you what's on the bottom. 3 tucks completely put in by hand, Insertion, 3 more tucks completely stitched by hand. Insertion, 3 more tucks completely by hand, a hem, and a beautiful piece of lace at the bottom. The back is very similar to the front. The skirt is just beautiful, has a plain top, and by the way, it closes with those little drawstrings, which was very typical of the 1880s dresses. For my Sewing from the Heart today, I have a really nice letter from Linda McMillan from Salem, Oregon. I want to tell you about our volunteer sewing group from our office called Helping Hands. We ladies from the Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs in Salem, Oregon, sew chemotherapy hats and donate them to various hospitals and cancer treatment centers around the Pacific Northwest. We meet during lunchtime to cut fabric and make up chemo cap sewing kits to hand out to our co-workers. The hats are sewn at home and returned to a collection basket. These hats will also be handed out to cancer patients at the annual Cancer Relay for Life event to be held in June here in Salem, Oregon. Our group of volunteers have sewn over 300 to 400 hats in the few short years we have done since beginning this worthwhile project. Thank you, Linda McMillan. Linda, thank you so much, and your friends from the Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs, thank you for taking your time, even your lunchtime, and doing this worthwhile project, and I'm sure they're very appreciated by the ladies who get them. And you mentioned that you had enjoyed visiting me at the booth at the fair at Puyallup, Washington. I enjoyed seeing you too, and all of our incredible ladies out in the greater Washington, Oregon area. It's my joy always to see you in Puyallup. I want to thank all of you for coming with me in my sewing room today. I've had fun. I hope you have. Come back next time.